Hello and welcome everyone to Insight. I'm Nnamdi Adigbo. I'm again flying solo this week as Elizabeth Omori is unavoidably absent. But not to worry, I have a couple of promising conversations lined up. First off is a conversation on Nigeria's transition to computer-based testing format, that is the CBT model for all academic examinations within the nation's education sector. We would also be looking at some of the reasons Nigerians continue to fall prey to Ponzi schemes, despite their failures and vulnerabilities. That's it. Let's get started.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize.
However complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern,
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of agreements in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
and gaining understanding is also getting insight.
We're beginning with Nigeria's ambitious plan to digitize all academic examinations by 2027, with the goal of eliminating paper-based tests and transiting entirely to computer-based testing, or should I say CBT model. Authorities argue the move will curb exam malpractices and accelerate the modernization of the education center. Yet, there are questions that linger, of course. Is the country making progress since we began the shift? Will the CBT format bridge gaps in exam credibility and deepen existing inequalities, in access to technology? And there are more questions. For instance, does the CBT format hold the key to fairer, more secured examinations, or do we run the risk of leaving millions of students behind? Well, this is some of the questions that I hope my guests will put in proper perspective as we engage in this conversation. My guest is Hanniel, I beg your pardon, Amisu Jafaru. Is that correct?
Yeah, Hanniel Jafaru.
Wonderful. Hanniel is an IT and cybersecurity expert. He is also the executive director, HTC Academy. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
The shift to CBT format has already begun with exams like the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board, having the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Exam now. It's called the UTME. We also know the West African Examination Council, WAEC, and the Senior School Certificate Examination, that is for private candidates, are already adopting the CBT format. Do you think this is a chance to perhaps or clearly end cheating scandals and outdated systems? Can technology truly rescue exam integrity in Nigeria?
To a large extent, technology is one area that helps to bring about integrity. So, when it has to do with the integrity of the exams, technology can help to mitigate that. Nothing can be completely eliminated, but it can be drastically mitigated and reduced to its barest minimum. There will still be the human loopholes and the human insecurity that because human will still interface with this technology. So
True.
You can't hide away or shy away from the fact that some humans can be compromised. But beyond that, I think to a large extent it's a good step in the right direction. Though there are concerns, we can't shy away from some of these concerns.
Before you go on to tell us about your concerns, when you say it's a step in the right direction, take off with the Unified Tertiary, that's the UTME, as your case study, and use that to buttress your point as being a step in the right direction.
Okay, so the numbers of persons that have been writing JAM, we've seen since they started the CBT-based test in 2013, 2012, there's been a progressive approach to it, and now we are seeing a fully automated CBT-based exams. So, and it's even a good thing that the UTME registrar
UTME, yes.
is
Okay.
even the one championing the committee for this project. So it's a good thing, and he already has experience in that way. So he can just bring forth some of the gaps that they experience, more of like a mentor-mentee kind of thing, so that a mentee would not be able to follow the path of a mentor and fail. So the registrar, being the chair of that committee, would help in ensuring that there is success in it. But why I mentioned the fact that it's a right step.
Yes.
It's a step in the right direction is the fact that globally, most exams, especially from secondary school level upwards, are using digital means of conducting. Digitized largely. They are using digital means of technology to conduct their exams, and we going that path would mean that we are also progressing. So we can't exempt ourselves from the progress of the world. We have to ensure that we are part of the world system. If not, we will begin to have
we'll be left behind.
Beyond that, we'll begin to have issues with certification when it has to do with international authorities, because as it stands now, some exam, WAEC is an exam known globally, NECO is an exam known globally, but if we continue to remain in this archaic system of manual exams, paper-based exams, the tendency for some of these accreditation bodies globally to begin to look at the possibility of dropping Nigeria's exam, even though it's a national exam, it can begin to raise concerns for them. So now that we are digitalizing it, it's easier for audit, it's easier for whatsoever system they want to use to checkmate or check fraud. So it's a good step in the right direction.
Great, but you did talk about concerns, and we're going to talk about some of these concerns. But I'd like to tell you about an online survey that NTA conducted quite recently, and I'd like to share the results with you. You know, we asked Nigerians a question. We asked them what they think about this ambitious transition to CBT format for all examinations with a deadline or a target deadline of 2027. The polls had three options. And interestingly, the result showed Nigeria's divided stance on the 2027 transition target. You know, with 50%, I beg your pardon, 50%, that's half of the respondents backing the policy only if certain issues, they talked about issues like power gaps, issues like device affordability, and even teacher training, and that these issues should be placed at the top of the agenda, and that way they can only then would they support the transition to CBT formats. And then 37.8% of our respondents, who are citizens of course, championed the shift, confident that it would curb cheating and streamline assessments like you've just talked about. However, there was this 12.2%, that feared that it risked sidelining vulnerable students in tech-poor regions, inferring that it could easily become, a digital divide in disguise. How then do we address, the key findings of these, like we did in this NTA survey? We showed that, yes, optimism may lead or leads, but there is still skepticism, one which underscores the high stake of balancing innovation with equity.
Okay, so let me start from the last group of persons that were concerned.
The 12.2.
The 12.2, they were concerned about a way of hiding behind technology to shy away from the digital divide. The truth of the matter is that it's not far fresh from the truth. There is that digital divide which is obvious, and those in the rural area have largely been sidelined when it has to do with technology. So what my suggestion would be is that it's not for us to shed away the policy and the project. Instead is to look for a way to manage that situation. So what we can do is to integrate digital technology as a subject in schools, thereby ensuring that, mandating it, not just integrating it, mandating it, thereby ensuring that that digital divide is closed. And those in the rural area, even though they're in the rural area, they will still be able to see this technology, interact with this technology, and that would not be a concern again for them. Then for those who wholeheartedly support the project, yes, I am always I'm a futuristic person, so I try as much as possible to see things from the future. It is a good thing. We can't run away from it. We either implement it now.
That's the 12.2% here now.
No,
sorry, that's not the 12. That's the
37.8%.
37.8%.
Yeah. So it's either we implement it now or we keep it and implement it later. But the bottom line is that we're still going to implement it. So the earlier we start implementing it, then begin to manage the challenges that comes from it, the easier it would be for us and those that are coming forth in future. And for those who are
the 50%,
the 50% who are concerned, they share the same sentiments with me. I have a strong sentiment in. I align more with their sentiment with the fact that there are strong infrastructural gaps, and more importantly, this we need to begin to look at the pitfall that will come from implementing this technology. One of it is that you're going to move the security of the exams from the physical phase, which is a physical form of security where someone goes, steals the paper or captures the paper and sends it to a digital phase. Now, the digital phase can now be a single point of failure because where all the exams papers are going to be would be in a particular storage unit. And if that storage unit is breached, all the exams are breached. So we'll begin to look at the security concerns, the digital security concerns that's going to emanate from implementing this technology. We're also going to look at the infrastructural gap. Truth be told, how many schools in the rural area, there are schools in the rural area that have never even seen a system before. And they even offer this subject called computing.
And this is true.
We have to now look at a way of addressing that concern, that infrastructural gaps. But now, this CBT-based exam is going to hold via internet. And we've not even the telecoms providers have not been able to push internet. The internet penetration rate as at now is still roving between 46 to 53%. So the remaining 54 to 43%, or 43 to 54%, what happens to them? So areas where there are no internet and there are secondary schools there that needs to take exams, how do you address that? So these are some of the concerns. We also need to address the concern of power. These infrastructures need to be powered. So does it not mean that all secondary school will have a solar power connected to them for the purpose of getting their device powered during these exams? So beyond power, we also have the issues of quantity. So there are schools that have 500 students taking exams at a go. So how do you manage the quantity? Does it mean that you need to have 500 computer sets for the students? So these are concerns that we really
and these are genuine concerns,
Yeah,
and they are valid concerns. And I like how you've laid them out,
Yeah.
whether generically, but even if we were to take this analysis that you've done on the basis of geopolitical disparity, or better still, let's look at it on a state-by-state readiness level in terms of gaps that currently exist. And for instance, we put Lagos State against the states like Borno on the same scale. You would ordinarily not expect the transition or their transition to happen or to be at the same pace. Because now you've mentioned some of the issues or most of the issues. You've talked, there is the infrastructural reality. True. There's also, if you want to look at it on the basis of equity versus efficiency, then you can then begin to wonder, how can we bridge these physical infrastructural deficits, whether it's in electricity that you've mentioned, whether it's in the internet connectivity gaps that you've talked about, and I'm happy and glad that you talked about schools in the rural areas, schools that are offline, and 80%, if not more, of these rural schools today in Nigeria will be part of this CBT, or rather 100%. But if we were to give a target of, okay, can 80% of these rural schools make this CBT targets in 2027? Is that even viable? How do we prioritize CBT, at the risk of sacrificing inclusivity for perceived progress, especially in communities like you've talked about, these rural communities that are still mostly offline?
Okay, so we are not far from 2020 when COVID-19 hit.
Yes.
Most schools went online.
Yes.
Many public schools couldn't. Was it the fact that the teachers could not operate some of these
Teach virtually.
virtual technologies? That's in a way, but more importantly, the reasons why many public schools could not go online, that they had to use television to begin to teach, was because of lack of this infrastructure. And between that period and now, we've not made a lot of progress when it has to do with closing the infrastructural gap. So it's a major concern. I would say if we want to implement this, it needs to be strategic. I'm very strategic in implementing certain policies, because you can't implement this kind of policy as a nationwide policy. You have to look at it from how tech savvy a region is, or a state is. What's the broadband penetration rate in the state? What's the power efficiency and the power allocation to a state, or power generation capability of a state? These are some of the metrics you put in place, or you put into perspective before you allocate time into the implementation of this kind of policies. Because, for example, like you've said, states like Lagos, that is largely an urban and suburban area, you can easily implement these policies without issues. But if you want to go to states like Borno and some very deep state like Zamfara, and states that we have issues of insecurity now, we may not give them the same projection of implementation as we will give to Lagos or Ogun or even Edo State. So progressively, when it has to do with technology, the southern part tends to be more efficient with it. So we should look at doing a pilot. That would be my suggestion, doing a pilot phase of the project. The committee definitely will sit and deliberate on how best to implement it. But a pilot implementation with a state that has that vast infrastructure, that very limited infrastructural gap would be an approach for me if I'm to recommend.
JAM is already succeeding, as it were. This has been in the can for some time for JAM. It's been in practice, rather, not in the can. It's been in practice. I know the 2025 JAM, I think it's about ended already. Yeah, because it did start sometime last week, and it's CBT based. Yes, there have been challenges. They usually hold like the mock exams. They address some of the challenges that emerge, and then they work on them, and then they have the actual exams. So yes, there are concerns, and they address them. So if we were to use JAM as a sample of what could happen on a much larger scale, national scale, that is meaning not just the unified tertiary matriculation exams, but we're even saying that secondary schools, primary schools, universities, undergraduates, postgraduates would all be using the CBT format, and it becomes a major issue. Yes, please come in. Please.
I am not. I'm not sure if they are interested in primary school for now, because we need to. There are a whole lot of things.
Okay.
All my discussions has been around secondary schools and middle schools. That becomes
Internal exams of schools. I'm
Because
telling
it
you
becomes-
honestly,
it
some
becomes a
universities,
concern.
some universities have already transited.
Yes, university is understandable because there are CAN networks. Most universities, most telcos want to set up their infrastructure in universities for the purpose of university students. So universities are not. I don't have concerns with universities transiting. I'm looking more at the lower education like the secondary and the primary.
I get that.
And we can't compare JAM with this. They may be using the same platform, which is the CBT, but the approach of the implementation is completely different. No, JAM is more of like a mobile exam. So you can be, you allow JAM to allocate where you will take the exam. So you just give them an area that you think you're interested. So the way JAM operates is CBT centers register with JAM. And JAM has a database of all CBT centers and the numbers of systems. But in this case, if you're talking about WAEC and internal WAEC, it's going to be the schools.
Yes.
So you are mandated to, as a school, let's say a secondary school that has 500 students, you are mandated to have, you may be mandated to have 500 computers. Because, and JAM again, it's quite different. You're only taking 4 subjects in JAM. Now you're taking like 8, 9, 10 subjects.
In some cases, yes.
The case, you can use, yes, we've seen successes in JAM, and it's good, it's good we can pick some of the successes and implement here, but we're looking at a larger scale, a more complex scale, and we have to look at it from a different dimension and a different angle.
You know, I understand we're fast approaching the end of our allotted time, so I'll ask one final question just before I let you go, just so it doesn't seem like we're exempting or forgetting that there's a community of people that are also integral that we need to consider in our transition to CBT-based exams. And I'm talking about, you know, the community of persons living with a disability. I mean, in terms of disability accessibility and possible exclusion of students, maybe with virtual or hearing impairment, you know, how do we ensure that the CBT platform integrates the PWD's community by mandating assistive technologies like screen readers maybe or sign language interfaces? You know, shouldn't this be factored alongside whatever plans or transition targets or holistic or face-by-face targets or plan that we have, since technology is already replete with assistive applications for persons with disability? Is a holistic approach feasible in this regard?
Yeah, persons with disabilities are actually coming to begin to rest because we are going digital. So there are already technology that assists them. So all I think that needs to be done is for the committee to put into perspective that there are these categories of persons, and then they will need to put in measures to ensure that these persons are in a way addressed, or their concerns are addressed during exams. Lastly, I think it's easier for them because they can just, the exams, the questions can begin to put, if talking about the major exams, they can begin to they can decide to set up a center specifically for persons with disabilities where all these technologies would be, and it would be there, and there will be persons that would assist them in terms of need. So I don't think they have an issue. Okay. It's just for the committee to ensure that to know that these persons exist, and this person needs to be taken care of, especially when it has to do.
They do exist, as a matter of fact, and they do need to be taken care of.
True.
But I've just been told that we could have time for one more question before we go. Okay. So maybe we should look at something in terms of social solidarity. It would seem like you inferred it somewhat earlier in your earlier submission, but you know, could CBT erode communal trust in exams as a shared national ritual, perhaps replacing it with impersonal systems? People say that computers are, you know, you don't have this person-to-person relations like you have with physical invigilators, for instance, with a computer. You know, so the skepticism of a faceless tech system, you know, versus the seeming, you know, public trust in physical examination, invigilators and paper trail. That's what I'm talking about here. So for you, does trust in technology trump, that psychological readiness or anxiety, whether by students or even instructors in schools, particularly in rural communities across Nigeria?
Well, when it has to do with technology, it has been, that's one of the everything, there's always an other side to a coin. So there are, everything that comes, every advantage that comes with its own disadvantage. So technology, one of the disadvantage of technology is the inability to isolate one and disconnect you from person-to-person communication and physical interaction. So, but one way I think we've been able to manage that is, while we have identified that to be a concern, we've also created an industry out of it, and that industry is the social industry.
True.
Where people now want to use every opportunity that they get to meet and mingle, meet and interact. So, yeah, technology has its own effects, but I don't think that's going to, on the long run, we would have to. So it's either we do it now or we do it later. There is no option of not doing it at all. So it's better we start doing it now and we begin to get used to the
So
system
invariably,
and
students, instructors should prepare their minds that the future is here now. It's not coming again. It's already here.
That is the reason why there is now educational technology. Most schools, universities are now offering it as a degree program because technology is now, education it's not isolated. It has now been integrated with technology. So we have to begin to look at how we can, teachers needs to upskill to integrate technology into their teaching skill. Students needs to upgrade to integrate technology into their learning skills. So these are things that we have to do as individuals. We can't just shy away from the fact that we are growing. We are growing, let's embed technology and start using technology so that we get used to it. The more we use, the more you acquaint yourself with the technology. And the easier it is for you to use this technology to create more things because technology is aimed at ensuring that you use it to solve problems. So that's just my take.
Hanniel Jafaru, IT and security expert, cyber security expert, I beg your pardon. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Inside. It's been a delight listening to your thoughts on these issues. I'd like to thank you so much indeed. Thank you for coming on our program.
Thank you for having me.